we are facing the real prospects of what could turn into an economic collapse, whereby our GDP growth, not just per capita, but the actual net GDP growth, will start turning negative every year.
South Africa is in danger of losing its middle income status. So argues the economics consultancy Eunomix in a new report. Claude Baissac of Eunomix joins me to discuss. So Claude, you have developed this model which is projecting that South Africa will lose its middle income status by the end of the decade. What were some of the key indicators that you focused on in your model?
We're taking GDP per capita on a PPP basis, and we're comparing it with a number of income groups. So we're tracking South Africa's GDP per capita since 2000, and we're looking into 2030. And we are tracking how South Africa's GDP per capita has evolved in relation to that of the world's average and middle-income countries and lower middle-income countries. And what we see is that we have gone from being slightly better than middle-income countries in 2000 to now being a middle-income country, to the strong likelihood of becoming a lower middle-income countries by 2030. We're not getting better, but we're not just stagnant. Our actual GDP per capita is decreasing, and this since 2014.
Enjoying this analysis? Click here to sign up for our 30-day free trial for more content from the CIA.
Okay, so Claude, the World Bank classifies a middle-income country as those countries where the gross national income per capita is between about $1,000 and $4,000 per capita. South Africa in 2020, about $5,400 per capita. So we're above that bracket. But what are the dangers of South Africans losing their wealth on a per capita basis? What are the factors that are dragging South Africa down in terms of its economic performance?
Okay, well, it's a country that has experienced literally, and I wrote an op-ed a month ago on that for Business Day. The country has experienced a growth rate collapse, or a growth collapse, since 2010, 2011. So after the better than world average growth of 2004, 5, 2009, the country reverted to its below world average growth in 2010, 2014. And despite significant increases in government expenditure and intervention in the economy, that average rate of growth has continued to go down, to the point that for the period 2015, 2019, our average growth over those 5 years was only 0.8%. So what's happening is that we are just not growing. And here we are not even taking into account the 2020 economic collapse, right? We are just looking at the long-term average growth, discounting 2009 as an exogenous shock and discounting 2020 as an exogenous shock. We're just looking at the long-term continuous moving average and 5-year averages, growth of this country. And the country is simply not growing. And the problem is that the growth rate, even if you are, at 1%, 0.8%, we have a growing population, which means that GDP per capita is naturally reducing. And the reason why GDP per capita is reducing is simply because we are not able to, produce enough. And the reason why we don't produce enough is because we are simply not attractive to investment. The country has now one of the lowest gross fixed capital formation in the world, both in terms of GFCFs from the private sector, which I think was, is now around 12, 13% of GDP, right? Which is, below even that of sub-Saharan Africa. And we have a government who's putatively investing in the economy, but that's actually not the fact. The fact is that 5% of the government budget goes to gross fixed capital formation. The rest goes to social payments and to the wages of the public service. So the engines of South African economic growth have been exhausted by 10 years of what one must say is simply bad economic policy and worst implementation of whatever bad policy has come in place.
So Claude, what policy recommendations would you make in the short term, but also in the long term, to get South Africa back on a growth trajectory?
Okay, so there's a little bit of good news, or not bad news. It's the fact that the new Minister of Finance, Golongwana, has drawn the line on increasing expenditures and raising debt, despite tremendous amount of public pressure and advocacy, even by luminaries like Nouriel Roubini. So he's holding the line, and he has stated in his midterm budget review that the country simply cannot afford to continue being both a welfare state and a developmental state. That is a state where government is driving economic growth as well as ensuring the basic minimum social requirements for stability and social human capital formation. But that's just not enough. You see, our problem is that there is a fundamental disconnect between macroeconomic policy on the one hand, monetary policy and budgetary policy, and microeconomic policy on the other hand. And we have almost a schizophrenic, and we've had it for a very long time. We have an almost schizophrenic economic policy complex, where microeconomic policies, which is where effectively investment, long-term investment takes place, where the signals for long-term investments and the signals for expenditure, for consumer spending, and the signals for exports and economic activity are generated. And on the other hand, macroeconomic policy and monetary policy, which are relatively conservative. So we have this very leftist, statist, and increasingly so under Ramaphosa. And so all the budget and the fiscus are able to do is try to hold the line, and they open the gates for expenditure a bit here, a bit there, not fixing any of the outstanding, growth dragging problems like Eskom's debt and the lack of investment in energy and basic infrastructure and transport and other productivity enhancing measures, not reducing policy uncertainty in key sectors like agriculture and mining and manufacturing, with introducing policies like localization. And so this divorce between macroeconomic policy and microeconomic policy ensures that we are an investment. We are a savings first laggard. We are then an investment laggard, both in terms of domestic investment and FDI, because no one wants to invest here, because fundamentally we are a return on capital laggard. And if this continues, and I'm very pleased that the ministry used those two countries as counterexamples, Argentina and Greece, but our own forecast is not simply anticipates that we are going to see an accelerated erosion in incomes and in our income status, but we are potentially post this recovery, which is really, just a reversal to where we were, except more damage than we were. We are facing the real prospects of what could turn into an economic collapse, whereby our GDP growth, not just per capita, but the actual net GDP growth, will start turning negative every year. And this is what we are contemplating at, and this is what our analysis shows.
Claude Baissac, thank you very much for joining us on the CRA channel. If you would like access to the Eunomix report that is referred to in this video, you're welcome to get in touch directly with Eunomix. There's an email address in the description below and in the pinned comment. CRA viewers get a 20% discount on the normal cover price of that report. Be sure to use the discount code #CRA when reaching out to Alexia at Eunomix. My name is David Ansara. This is the CRA. Until next time, take care.